You forged my name, Ben, after everything I gave you. My own son looked me in the eye and called me nobody in front of a crowd at a neighborhood barbecue. I spent 30 years working night shifts to pay off that house for him. And how did he thank me? He forged $150,000 in loans in my name and shoved me when I tried to sell the house to afford heart surgery. I've been through betrayal, silence, and being told I was a burden. But I found the strength to fight back with nothing but a file box full of old receipts, a sister I hadn't spoken to in years, and the truth. If you've ever felt used or erased by your own children, don't scroll past this. I'll show you how I paid off $68,000 in hospital bills, bought my own condo at 72, and finally rebuilt my life with the love of a grandson and the family I chose. And yes, when I burned the family photo album in front of everyone, and my grandson slipped a bracelet into my hand whispering, "You're my hero, Grandma," that's when I knew I'd finally won. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, this story might be your turning point. Before I open up about what happened, I want to hear from you. When life gets tough, who's the person you turn to, your mom or your dad? Drop a 1 in the comments. If it's your mom, 2. If it's your dad, or 3. If it's both. I'll be reading every reply. Your answers help me feel a little less alone. Ready? Let's take this journey together. My heart stuttered a sharp jab under my ribs as I stared at the hospital bill on my kitchen table. $68,000 dated September 7, 2024 for a surgery I needed by November, or I might not see another spring. Was this how my sacrifices ended alone in my kitchen? The peeling wallpaper curled like old skin, and the coffee maker dripped a slow, mocking rhythm. I sat in my cramped apartment, a corner of a quiet suburb outside Pittsburgh, surrounded by a stack of unpaid bills, electric water, the pharmacy for my heart pills. The radio hummed low, some classic rock tune from my youth, maybe Springsteen, his voice gravelly with dreams I'd long buried. My hands trembled, smudging the bill's stark numbers. I pressed my palm to my chest, willing the ache to ease, but it lingered, a reminder of the clock ticking inside me. I'd spent 30 years pouring everything into my son, Ben, night shifts at the pharmacy, skipping dinners, to save for his college tuition signing over the house I'd paid off with every extra dime, so he and Mandy could have a home for their kids, Luke and Bella. I'd thought those sacrifices bound us, but now with this bill staring me down, I felt erased, like I'd never been more than a bank to them. My eyes drifted to a faded photo tucked under a magnet on the fridge. Ben at 8, grinning at the county fair cotton candy staining his cheeks. Back then, he'd clung to my hand, calling me his hero. Where was that boy now? The doorbell buzzed sharp and jarring. I wiped my eyes, forcing a smile, and shuffled to the door. Raymond Martinez, my neighbor of 20 years, stood there, his gray hair peeking under a pirate's cap, holding a foil-covered dish. The smell of warm apple pie hit me sweet and heavy, a slice of suburban comfort. "Thought you could use this." Pat Ray said, his voice soft but steady. He stepped inside, glancing at the bills on the table. "Saw Ben's new SUV parked at your old house. Shiny thing. You paid for that house, didn't you?" His words stung like a needle pricking an old wound. I knotted my throat tight and set the pie on the counter. "Yeah, Ray, every cent." I forced a chuckle, but my fingers gripped the table's edge knuckles, whitening. Ben's house, the one I'd sweated for, was his castle now while I scraped by in this rented box. Ray's eyes softened like he saw the weight I carried. "You don't deserve this, Pat," he said, then tipped his cap and left the door clicking shut. I sank back into my chair, the radio's tune fading to static. Ray's comment churned in my mind, Ben's new car, my house. I'd never asked for gratitude, but I'd hoped for something, maybe a call, a visit, not this silence. The bill sat there, its numbers blurring as my chest tightened again. I breathed slow, like the doctor taught me, counting to 10. Was I ever their mother, or just their bank? The question burned raw and sharp, cutting through the fog of my fear. Alone now, I reached for the photo on the fridge, my fingers brushing Ben's faded smile. I remembered the fair, how he'd laughed when I won him a stuffed bear, how he'd hugged me so tight I thought he'd never let go. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who hadn't called in weeks. My heart pounded not just from the disease, but from a spark of something new resolve. I couldn't sit here waiting to die. I grabbed my phone, the screen cold against my palm, and scrolled to Ben's number. My thumb hovered, shaking as I whispered, "You owe me this much, Ben." The radio went quiet, leaving only my ragged breath. Then as I shifted the bills to clear space, a folded paper slipped out marked urgent loan default in red ink. My stomach dropped. I'd never taken a loan, not in years. I unfolded it, my hands unsteady, and scanned the text. There, in black and white, was my name tied to a $50,000 loan I didn't recognize. The room spun, the coffee maker's drip sounding like a hammer. Who signed it? Ben's face flashed in my mind, his grin from the fair, now a ghost. Ben's voice snapped through the phone, sharp as a blade. "You're a burden, Mom," he said. How did my boy, the one I'd raised with every ounce of me, become so cruel? The flickering light bulb in my kitchen cast jittery shadows across the table, mirroring the churn in my chest. It was evening, the air thick with the weight of my hurt. My apartment, a cramped box in our Pittsburgh suburb, felt smaller tonight, the walls closing in. Outside, a neighbor's lawnmower hummed a steady drone of suburban life that mocked my unraveling world. I gripped the phone. My knuckles pale, the $68,000 hospital bill still crumpled beside that strange bank notice from yesterday. It said loan default in red ink, my name printed bold, but I hadn't signed anything. Ben's house, the one I'd paid off with years of double shifts, flashed in my mind, his castle built on my sacrifices. I took a shaky breath, my chest pinching, and said, "Ben, I need help. The surgery's in November, or I might not make it." My voice cracked, betraying me. I pictured him in that house, the one I'd signed over to help him and Mandy get a loan years ago, trusting he'd remember what I'd done. I heard a sports game blaring in the background, a crowd roaring, and then Ben's sigh, heavy, annoyed. "You're stuck in the past, Mom," he said. "We've got our own bills. We can't pay yours." A soft shuffle came through, maybe Luke, my grandson, lingering nearby. I imagined his wide eyes, the ones that lit up when I told him stories of my youth working summers at the county fair. But Ben didn't pause. "I'm sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all, and the line went dead. I slumped in my chair, the phone slipping to the table with a dull thud. My chest ached, not just from the heart condition, but from the sting of his words. "You're a burden." They echoed, slicing deeper each time. The lawnmower's hum faded, leaving a hollow silence. I stared at the bank notice, my name glaring back, tied to a $50,000 loan I didn't take. I traced the letters, my fingers trembling, and remembered the day I signed the house deed over to Ben and Mandy. It'll help us start fresh. Ben had said, his smile wide, promising to pay the taxes. I'd believed him, like I always did. Had he used me even then, I stood my legs wobbly and shuffled to the counter, the flickering light buzzing above. Did I give him everything only to mean nothing? The question burned raw in my throat. I thought of Evie, my sister, who hadn't spoken to me in years, not since we fought over something I could barely recall, maybe Mom's old necklace. I reached for my phone to call her, my thumb hovering over her name, but stopped. What would I say? That my own son turned his back on me, that I was scared to die alone. The shame choked me, and I set the phone down, my hands shaking. Instead, I opened my laptop, the screen's glow harsh in the dim kitchen. I typed Legal Help Pittsburgh into the search bar, my fingers clumsy but driven. I couldn't sit here waiting for Ben to care. The light bulb flickered again, its buzz a nagging pulse matching my racing heart. I'd worked too hard, given too much to let this bill be my end. I whispered, "I'll do this alone," the words a vow to myself. Desperation rising like a tide. As I scrolled through lawyer listings, my phone pinged a sharp chime, cutting the silence. An email popped up dated a month ago from a bank I didn't use. Loan payment overdue. It read my name listed again, tied to a $50,000 loan for Ben's house. My breath caught the screen blurring. The kitchen seemed to tilt the light's buzz louder now. Ben's house. My house was tangled in something I didn't understand. Who had done this to me? Ben's voice rang out at the farmer's market barbecue, sharp and cruel. "You're nobody now, Mom," he shouted, each word a knife in my heart. Was this my reward for a lifetime of sacrifice? The mid-morning sun beat down on the suburban park where colorful stalls lined the grass, their awnings flapping in the breeze. The air carried the sizzle of grilled chicken and the chatter of neighbors, a slice of Pittsburgh's community life. I stood near a stall piled with tomatoes, my hands still shaky from that loan email I'd found last night. $50,000, my name tied to Ben's house. I'd come to the barbecue hoping to clear my head to feel normal for an hour, but Ben's words shattered that hope. My chest tightened, the familiar ache flaring, a reminder of the surgery I couldn't afford. Ben loomed over me, his face flushed with anger, his new SUV glinting in the parking lot behind him. "Stop guilting us, Mom," he yelled loud enough for heads to turn. Mandy stepped up beside him, her eyes narrow. "You skipped my wedding for work, Pat," she snapped her voice, dripping with years of resentment. Before I could respond, she pushed me, her hands firm against my shoulders. I stumbled back, catching myself on the stall's edge, the smell of grilled chicken, heavy in the air. Neighbors gasped, their chatter hushing. My face burned, tears pricking my eyes, but I swallowed them, refusing to break in front of everyone. I turned to leave my sandals crunching on the gravel path when Raymond Martinez caught my arm. His gray eyes were steady, kind under his worn pirate's cap. "You're worth more than this, Pat," he whispered, his voice low but firm. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight. As I moved away, I overheard Ben talking to a neighbor by the lemonade stand. "She's just whining," he said, his tone dismissive, like my years of night shifts to pay his mortgage meant nothing. The words cut deeper than Mandy's push, turning my hurt into something harder, sharper. The market's chatter faded as I walked, the sun too bright, my anger simmering. Back in my apartment that evening, the quiet was a refuge, broken only by the steady tick of the kitchen clock. The loan email still haunted me. Ben's muttered, "She'll never find those loans at the barbecue," echoed in my head. What was he hiding? I sank into my chair, the flickering light bulb casting shadows over the table where bills and that strange bank notice sat. I'd given up vacations, new clothes, my own dreams to keep Ben's life steady, and now I was nobody. My fingers brushed the table's edge, rough from years of use, and I thought was my love, a gift or a debt they'll never pay. Rummaging through a drawer, I found Sofia Alvarez's business card tucked away from when she'd helped with my late husband's estate. Sofia, with her calm voice and sharp mind, had been a lifeline then. Maybe she could be now. The clock's tick grew louder as I dialed her number, my heart pounding with a new defiance. When her voicemail answered, I left a message, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "Sofia, it's Pat Coleman. I need to check something about my house. Call me back." I hung up, the silence heavy but different now, charged with purpose. I wasn't going to let Ben and Mandy erase me. Then Sofia's voicemail pinged back, her voice clear through the phone's speaker. "Pat, I'm free tomorrow. We'll check that house deed." My breath caught a spark of hope flaring, but that hope twisted as I glanced at the bank notice again, my name glaring. What had Ben done? Evie's voicemail broke through 3 years of silence, her voice warm, promising help. Could my sister, after all this time, help me reclaim my life? Morning light filtered through the cracked blinds of my apartment, a cramped corner of our Pittsburgh suburb. The kitchen table was a mess, bills, that strange bank notice, and a coffee cup stained from yesterday. A faint coffee shop aroma drifted in from a neighbor's window, the kind of suburban ritual that usually comforted me, but now felt like a mockery. My chest still ached from Ben's words at the barbecue yesterday. "You're nobody now," Mom and Mandy's pusher hands shoving me back like I was nothing. That loan email tying my name to a $50,000 debt for Ben's house gnawed at me. Had he betrayed me that far back when I signed the deed to help him, I sat my fingers tracing the phone's edge and played Evie's message again. Ray told me about the barbecue, Pat. She said, her voice steady but soft. There's something about that house you need to know. She paused, then added, I lost my daughter for years over a stupid fight about my job. Don't let Ben take you down. My throat tightened. Evie and I hadn't spoken since we argued over Mom's old necklace, a petty rift that felt so small now. Her words stirred something in me, a flicker of strength beneath the desperation. I stood my hand steadier and dialed Sofia Alvarez, the lawyer who'd helped with my husband's estate years ago. The coffee maker gurgled a familiar hum as I waited for her to answer. Sofia's office was a world away from my clutter. All polished wood and neat files, the kind of place you'd expect in a U.S. legal drama. I sat across from her, the lone email printed out its words, stark, on the page. Sofia's dark eyes scanned it, her brow furrowing. This smells like fraud, Pat, she said, her voice calm but firm. You own that house outright. The deed's in your name, not Ben's. I nodded, my fingers twisting in my lap, remembering the day I signed the house over to help Ben and Mandy get a loan. It was for their future, I said, my voice cracking. I trusted him. Sofia leaned forward, her pen tapping the desk. We'll do a title search, but you have the power here. Her words echoed as I left the city, buses hum vibrating through me as I rode home, a spark of determination igniting. Back in my apartment, the coffee shop scent lingered, mixing with the stale air. My phone buzzed, and Evie's name lit up the screen. Pat, you're worth more than Ben's lies, she said when I answered, her voice fierce. She told me about reconciling with her daughter last year, how she'd fought to rebuild that bond after years apart. You can fight too, she said. I paced the floor, creaking, and pulled out my old file box stuffed with receipts and papers from decades past. Did I build their home or their trap? The question stung as I rifled through the box, my fingers brushing yellowed envelopes. Then I found it, the house deed, my name in bold. Stapled to it was a note in Ben's handwriting, loan collateral, Ben. My heart stopped, the coffee maker's gurgle fading to a dull roar. I stared at the note, its date matching the loan email from last night. A loan I never signed. Ben's voice from the barbecue echoed, She'll never find those loans. What had he done? My name glared from the note, stapled to the house deed tied to a loan I never signed. Was Ben stealing my future piece by piece? Late night cloaked my Pittsburgh apartment, the kitchen table buried under papers, bills, that bank notice, the deed I'd found this morning. The flickering lamp cast jagged shadows, mirroring the churn in my chest. Ben's house, the one I'd paid for with years of double shifts at the pharmacy, stood in my mind, a symbol of all I'd given him. A distant train whistle pierced the quiet, its mournful hum, a suburban echo that made my loneliness sharper. My fingers traced the deed's note, loan collateral. Ben dated the same as that $50,000 loan email. Ben's words from the barbecue. She'll never find those loans rang in my ears. My heart ached not just from the disease, but from the betrayal sinking in. I grabbed my phone and dialed Sofia Alvarez, my lawyer, my voice steadier than I felt. Sofia, I found something, I said, reading the note aloud. The line crackled, then her calm voice came through. That's fraud, Pat. You didn't sign for this. She paused, her tone firm. Selling the house might be your only way out. I swallowed hard, remembering Ben's college years, how I'd worked nights to cover his tuition, thinking it would secure his future. My trust in him felt like a weight, now crushing. I'll do what I have to, I said, hanging up as the train's whistle faded, leaving a hollow silence. My anger grew a slow burn as I texted Luke, my grandson, hoping he'd heard something. Was my trust their weapon or my weakness? Luke's reply came fast, his words tentative. Heard Dad say he hid a lone grandma. My heart twisted. Luke, with his wide eyes and love for my stories about waitressing in the 80s, was caught in the middle. I pictured him in Ben's house, clutching his phone, torn between his dad and me. Thank you, sweetheart, I texted back, my fingers trembling. I could almost hear his voice soft from when we'd sit on my old porch, me spinning tales of my first job, him laughing at how I spilled coffee on my boss. Now Ben's betrayal threatened even that bond. I stood pacing the lamp's flicker, matching my racing pulse. The train's hum lingered in my mind as I caught a bus to Sophia's office. Luke's text heavy in my thoughts. Sophia's office was all clean lines and stacked files, a stark contrast to my cluttered world. She leaned across her desk, her dark eyes sharp. "The deed's clear, Pat. The house is yours. We can sell it to cover your surgery." I nodded, guilt gnawing at me. Luke and Bella loved that house, their swing set in the yard. But Ben's voice calling me nobody at the barbecue and Mandy's push hardened my resolve. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm. Sophia slid papers toward me, her pen scratching as she noted the next steps. The betrayal burned, but so did my need to live. The lamp's flicker back home seemed to pulse with my decision as I returned the bus's hum fading. Back in my apartment, I rummaged through a drawer searching for more clues. My fingers brushed an old answering machine, a relic from the 90s I hadn't tossed. I plugged it in, curious, and pressed play. A bank's automated voice crackled through, "Warning, unauthorized loans detected in your name, Patricia Coleman." My breath caught the lamp's buzz louder now. The message mentioned a second loan larger than the first tied to my name. My heart pounded the room, tilting. Ben's muttered words at the barbecue. "She'll never find," those loans felt like a confession now. Mandy's confession hit like a slap, her voice shaking. "We forged your name," she cried. How much had they hidden from me? Midday light barely pierced the blinds of my Pittsburgh apartment, the kitchen tense with scattered papers, bills, that bank noticed the deed, with Ben's damning note. A neighbor's radio played soft jazz, its mellow notes drifting through the window, a suburban hum that clashed with the storm in my chest. The answering machine's recording from last night echoed in my mind. "Unauthorized loans in your name, Patricia Coleman." A second loan bigger than the $50,000 I'd found tied to my name. Ben's muttered words at the barbecue. "She'll never find," those loans felt like a knife now carving out the trust I'd given him. I'd sacrificed my dreams, skipped vacations, poured every dime into his house, only to be betrayed. The door banged open, and Mandy stormed in her face, flushed eyes wild. "You're ruining our family, Pat," she shouted, pointing a trembling finger. The jazz radio hummed faintly, its calm, mocking our chaos. I stood my hand steady despite the ache in my chest and met her gaze. "What did you do, Mandy?" I asked, my voice low, calm, but firm. Her lips quivered and she paced her sneakers, squeaking on the linoleum. "We forged your name for loans," she blurted, her voice breaking. "We were drowning in debt." My breath caught the room tilting. I pictured her wedding, the one I'd missed for a hospital shift to pay Ben's bills, how she'd held that grudge ever since. "You used me," I said, my words sharp. Mandy's eyes dropped, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. The jazz faded as I turned away, my hands shaking, and grabbed my keys to drive to Evie's. Evie's home was a warm contrast, its soft lighting and cozy couch, a haven. The teapot whistled, steam curling as she poured tea, her gray hair tucked behind her ears. I played the bank's recording on my phone, its robotic voice chilling. Evie listened, her face tightening, then shared her own story. "I lost my daughter for years over my career," she said, her voice warm but fierce. "Fought my way back to her. You're stronger than their lies, Pat." The teapot's whistle softened, grounding me. I sipped the tea, its warmth steadying my hands, and thought of my own fights, nights at the pharmacy, saving for Ben's future. Evie's words sank in, fanning the anger in my chest into resolve. Did I raise them, or did they erase me? I hugged her, the couch creaking, and drove back, her encouragement echoing. Back in my apartment, the jazz radio still played, now faint. I called Sophia Alvarez, my lawyer, my voice firm. "Start the house sale," I said. Sophia's pen scratched over the phone, promising action. I rummaged through my file box, my fingers brushing old receipts, and found another loan document, $100,000 listing Ben as the beneficiary. My heart pounded the paper, crinkling in my grip. The jazz faded the room, silent except for my ragged breath. I'd built their home, but they'd used it to trap me. As I set the document down, my eyes caught a yellowed envelope in the box addressed to me in my late husband's scrawl. My fingers froze the air heavy. It hinted at family debts, a warning I'd never seen. What else had Ben kept from me? Ben's rage chilled me as he smashed my husband's watch at the town hall, its pieces scattering like my trust. Could he erase my past so easily? Midday sun poured into the suburban community center, where colorful banners fluttered above a potluck table laden with casseroles, a Pittsburgh tradition that felt hollow today. The air smelled of baked cheese and summer grass, but my chest ached the weight of that $100,000 loan document and my late husband's letter, family debts pressing heavy. I'd come to the town hall to clear my mind to escape the sting of Mandy's confession yesterday, her words admitting they'd forged my name for loans. But Ben's presence, his broad shoulders tense near the table, shattered any hope of peace. I touched the old watch on my wrist, my husband's last gift, its faint tick, a tether to the life I'd built for Ben, sacrificing my dreams to pay off his house. Ben spotted me, his eyes narrowing, and stormed over, knocking a casserole dish that clinked against another. "You don't control us anymore, Mom," he shouted, grabbing my wrist. Before I could pull away, he tore the watch off and smashed it on the floor, its glass splintering. "You're ruining everything," he roared. The crowd gasped, forks pausing mid-air. Luke, my grandson, stood frozen by a banner, his face, pale eyes wide, like when I'd told him stories of my youth. My heart cracked, not just from the disease, but from Ben's cruelty, his entitlement born from my years of funding. His college, his home, laid bare. Tears burned as I stumbled toward the exit, the banner's bright colors blurring my sandals, scraping the floor. Outside, the air was cooler, the chatter muffled. Luke ran to me, his sneakers crunching gravel. "I don't want you to die, Grandma," he whispered, his voice, small eyes glistening. I hugged him, his warmth grounding me, and remembered telling him about my first job, waitressing to save for his dad's future. "I'm fighting Luke," I said, my voice shaky but firm. My devastation hardened into anger. Ben's smashed watch, a symbol of his betrayal. Can love survive a broken past? The question seared as I squeezed Luke's hand, the community center's noise fading behind us, my steps heavier as I headed home. In my apartment that evening, the kitchen clock's tick echoed, amplifying my turmoil. The loan documents and my husband's letter sat on the table, their words screaming Ben's deceit. I called Sofia Alvarez, my lawyer, my fingers clutching Luke's photo from last summer, his smile bright at a picnic. "Pat, we've got a buyer for the house." Sofia said, her voice steady. "The offer covers your surgery and more." I nodded, though she couldn't see my resolve growing. "Do it," I said, the clock's rhythm matching my pulse. I wasn't letting Ben's rage stop me from living, not after all I'd given him. As I hung up, I stepped to the window. The evening air cool. Voices drifted up Ben, arguing with someone, his tone panicked. "She can't know about the loan exposure," he hissed, likely to a lender. My breath caught the words, "a knife." I closed the curtain, my hand steady now, but my phone pinged with an email from Sofia, a bank report hinting at a second loan's massive scale. My heart raced, the clock's tick louder. How deep did Ben's betrayal go if your own child humiliated you in public? Could you still believe they loved you? What happens next made her question everything she gave up for them. If you're still here, drop a 6 in the comments because the next part might hit too close to home. Ben's hands shoved me against my apartment door, the wood creaking under my weight. "You're destroying our lives?" He snarled his words, shaking my soul. Was I the villain now? Late afternoon light filtered through the cracked blinds of my Pittsburgh apartment, the kitchen tense with the hiss of the coffee pot and a flickering light bulb that buzzed like my nerves. The scent of brewing coffee filled the air, a suburban ritual that did nothing to calm the storm inside me. That bank report from Sofia, my lawyer sat on the table confirming a $100,000 loan in my name, tied to Ben's house. The house I'd paid for with years of sacrificed dreams, nights I'd chosen his future over my own career as a nurse. My late husband's letter found yesterday warned of Ben's reckless debts, its words a ghost whispering betrayal. I'd given everything to my son, and now he stood in my doorway, eyes wild face flushed with desperation. "You're destroying us by selling that house." Ben shouted, pushing me again, my shoulder hitting the door with a thud. The coffee pot's hiss grew louder, amplifying the tension. My chest ached, the heart condition flaring, but I squared my shoulders, my voice steady. "I'm saving my life, Ben," I said, meeting his gaze. "You used me. Those loans you forged my name." His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it, his silence louder than his rage. I thought of the years I'd worked double shifts to fund his college, his house, believing it would keep us close. Now his hands on me felt like the final betrayal. He stormed out the door, slamming, leaving the coffee's bitter scent heavy in the air. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling, but my resolve held firm, a fire kindling inside. The bus ride to Sofia Alvarez's law office was a blur, the suburban streets humming with evening traffic, car horns faint through the window. Sofia's office was a haven of order neat, files polished desk, a stark contrast to my cluttered world. She slid papers toward me, her dark eyes calm. "The buyer's offer is solid, Pat," she said, her pen scratching. "It covers your surgery and a small condo." I knotted my fingers, twisting the strap of my purse, picturing Luke and Bella in that house, their swing set in the yard. Guilt gnawed, but Ben's push, his words, "You're destroying us," steeled me. Raymond Martinez, my neighbor, knocked as I signed the papers, his gray hair peeking under his cap. "I saw you pay every cent for that house, Pat," he said, offering a written statement. His words, simple and kind, felt like a lifeline. I thanked him, Sophia's voice echoing as I left. "You're taking back what's yours." The traffic's hum followed me home, my steps lighter. Back in my apartment, the coffee pot was cold, but the air felt charged. Evelyn Sullivan, my sister, arrived, her gray hair tucked behind her ears, carrying a thermos of coffee. We sat at the table, the light bulb still flickering, and she poured us cups, the aroma grounding me. I fought to get my daughter back after years apart. Evie said, her voice warm but fierce, "You're not their villain, Pat." Her story of reconciling with her daughter, lost over a career fight, mirrored my own pain. I showed her Sophia's bank report, the $100,000 loan listing Ben as the beneficiary. My hands shook, but Evie's steady gaze bolstered me. "You're stronger than this," she said, her cup clinking against mine. Did I carry their burdens or bury my own dreams? The question burned as I rifled through my file box seeking answers. My fingers brushed a yellowed envelope, my late husband's handwriting scrawled across it. My breath caught the coffee's scent, fading. The letter warned of Ben's reckless debts, a plea to protect myself. My heart pounded, the flickering light buzzing louder. What else had Ben hidden? My husband's letter, clutched in my hand, proved Ben's betrayal. The block party was my moment to make them see me. Could I finally stand tall? Evening settled over the Pittsburgh suburb, the block party alive with string lights twinkling above the street. Soft jazz floated from a speaker neighbor's, swaying to the rhythm, their laughter mixing with the clink of glasses. The festive air felt like a lie, my chest tight with the weight of the truth. That letter from my late husband found yesterday warned of Ben's reckless debts, and Sophia's bank report confirmed a $100,000 loan forged in my name. I'd sacrificed everything, my nursing dreams, vacations, years of double shifts to pay for Ben's house, only to be called nobody and pushed by him and Mandy. Tonight I'd show them who I was. My phone pinged before I left my apartment, an email from the bank confirming the loan fraud. My hand steadied, emboldened, as I slipped the letter and report into my purse, the jazz outside calling me forward. I stepped into the party, the air warm with summer's end, the scent of grilled burgers lingering. Neighbors smiled, unaware of the storm brewing. I spotted Ben near a table, his jaw tight, Mandy beside him, her eyes darting. Luke, my grandson, hovered nearby, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. I waited for a toast, the host raising a glass, and then I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the jazz. I have something to say." The music paused, heads turning. I held up my husband's letter, my hands steady. "Ben's debts will ruin us, Pat." I read, my voice clear. "He and Mandy forged loans in my name, $150,000 to save their own skins." I waved the bank report, the crowd gasping. Ben's face reddened. Mandy's eyes widened. "You abandoned us!" "Mom." Ben shouted, his voice cracking. Mandy stepped forward, tears streaming. "We forged them, Pat," she whispered. "I'm sorry." Luke grabbed my hand, his grip tight, whispering, "You're my hero, Grandma." The jazz speaker hummed silent now as neighbors stared, the lights flickering above. I stood tall, my heart pounding but strong, and walked away, Ben's shout fading behind me. The crowd's murmurs followed me as I left, my sandals clicking on the pavement, head high. I'd exposed their lies, the truth, a weight lifted. Back in my apartment, the quiet wrapped around me, the soft glow of a lamp warming the room. Evie, my sister, sat with me pouring tea from a thermos, its steam curling in the air. "You were fearless, Pat," she said, her gray eyes proud. I sipped the tea, its warmth soothing, and thought of her own fight to reconnect with her daughter after years apart. My hands still shook from the confrontation, but triumph bloomed in my chest. Was my silence their shield or my shackle? The question lingered as I set the cup down, the lamp's glow steady now. I'd spent years building Ben's life, missing Mandy's wedding for work to keep them afloat, only to be betrayed. But tonight I'd reclaim my voice. As Evie hugged me, her sweater soft against my cheek, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Ben lit up the screen. "We need to talk tomorrow. Please." My breath caught the lamp's light, casting a shadow. What could he say now after everything? Ben's apology came too late, his words hollow against the fire I was about to light. Could I ever forgive the son who pushed me, who broke my heart and my trust? Night draped my Pittsburgh apartment's courtyard, the fire pit's flames crackling, casting shadows that danced on the brick wall. The smoky scent mingled with the cool September air, a suburban ritual that felt right for what I had to do. My chest still ached from Ben's push against my door last week, his snarl, "You're destroying us," ringing alongside the $150,000 in forged loans he and Mandy had pinned on me. My late husband's letter warning of Ben's reckless debts lay heavy in my purse, fueling my decision to sever the ties that bound me to his betrayal. I'd given up my nursing dreams, poured every dime into his house, only to be called nobody and shoved. Tonight I'd take back my life. The courtyard gate creaked and Ben stepped through, Mandy trailing, her face pale. Luke, my grandson, followed, his eyes wide but steady. Ben's shoulders slumped, his voice flat. "I failed you, Mom," he said, standing by the fire pit. Mandy's lips trembled. "We were desperate, Pat. Forgive us." I clutched my husband's letter, its paper worn, and met their gazes. "You erased me," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the fire's crackle. Ben flinched, his career failures, failed startups, debts piling up, flashing in my mind. Mandy's guilt tied to her resentment over my missing her wedding for work didn't soften me. I'd built their life, and they'd stolen mine. My steps were firm as I led them to the fire pit, the flames snapping, neighbors' curtains twitching. "Follow me," I said, my heart pounding, but sure. In the courtyard, I pulled the family photo album from my bag, its leather cover worn from years of love. Pictures of Ben as a boy, Luke and Bella's birthdays, our family before it broke. "I'm done carrying your lies," I said, tossing it into the fire. The flames roared, pages curling, the smoky scent sharp. Ben's eyes widened, a strangled sound escaping him. Mandy sobbed, her hands covering her face. Luke nodded silently, his loyalty, a quiet strength. Neighbors peeked from windows, their silhouettes dark against the glow. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I answered Sophia Alvarez, my lawyer, her voice calm. "Pat, the house sale funds cleared. Your surgery's covered." I nodded, the fire's heat warming my face, and hung up. The album burned ashes, rising my past, with Ben turning to smoke. I turned back to them, my voice firm. "You don't get to define me anymore." The fire's crackle filled the silence as I walked inside, the courtyard's glow fading. Back in my apartment, the air was cool, the night quiet except for my steady breath. I sat at the kitchen table, the hospital bill in front of me, and dialed the billing office. "I'm paying in full," I said, my voice unwavering. The clerk's surprise crackled through the line, but I felt only relief. I turned to Ben and Mandy, still standing in the doorway. "You need to leave," I said. Mandy's tears fell, but I held firm. Luke lingered, his sneakers scuffing the floor, and hugged me, his arms tight. As he pulled back, he slipped a folded paper into my hand, his eyes soft. "For you, Grandma," he whispered. I kept him close a moment longer, then let him go, the door clicking shut. My liberation settled over me, the night air cool through the open window. I unfolded Luke's drawing, a sketch of me smiling, signed, "Love you, Grandma." My heart swelled, the paper trembling in my hands. Did I lose a son or find myself? My heart beat strong after the surgery, steady and sure, but Luke's drawing tucked in my bag gave it hope. Could I build a new life without Ben? The hospital recovery room smelled of antiseptic, its sterile white walls closing in. Beeping monitors pulsed a rhythm, grounding me in the reality of Pittsburgh's medical world. I lay in the bed, my chest tender, but alive, the $68,000 surgery behind me paid for by selling the house I'd poured my life into for Ben. His betrayal forged loans, his push. His cruel words still stung, but I'd burned our family album last night, letting those memories turn to ash. Luke's drawing a sketch of me smiling was all I clung to now. A nurse bustled in her shoes, squeaking on the linoleum. "You're doing great, Pat," she said, checking my chart. "A volunteer will help with discharge." No family came. Her words pricked, but I nodded my fingers, brushing the drawing in my bag. Ben and Mandy hadn't come, but Luke's loyalty lingered, his stories of my youth binding us. I closed my eyes, the monitor's steady beep fading as I pictured his face, and felt a breeze of hope as the nurse wheeled me out. My new condo was a fresh start, its walls bright with fresh paint, a small porch catching the late September light. I shuffled inside, my hospital bag heavy, and set it on the counter, the air carrying a hint of paint and possibility. This suburban complex just outside Pittsburgh was mine, bought with the house sales leftovers. I unpacked slowly, my hands steady, and found Luke's drawing me, smiling, signed, "Love you, Grandma." Tucked beside it was a woven bracelet with a heart charm, a note in childish scrawl from Bella. My throat tightened. Bella, who loved my cookie baking sessions. Her giggles filling my old kitchen had sent this. I sat on the couch, the porch breeze drifting through the open door, and began a letter to them. I fought for me. I wrote my pen, scratching so you'd know your worth. The words flowed my heart. Light, thinking of Luke's stories and Bella's cookies. Did I raise them, or did they erase me? The question softened as I wrote, the breeze cool, carrying away the weight of Ben's betrayal. I stood my legs stronger and crossed to a shelf by the window. A photo of Ben as a boy laughing at a fair sat in my bag. I'd kept it despite everything, his push, his "you're nobody," the smashed watch. I placed it on the shelf, my fingers lingering. "I love you, Ben," I whispered, "but I love me too." The condo's fresh paint smelled of renewal, my liberation settling like a warm blanket. The porch breeze rustled the curtains and I felt whole, my identity no longer tied to sacrifices for a son who'd used me. My phone buzzed on the counter, a sharp chime. Luke's name lit up the screen, his text. Simple. "Can I visit soon?" My heart swelled, the bracelet glinting in the light. Maybe I hadn't lost everything. Luke's visit and Bella's bracelet sparked a quiet hope in my new condo. Could I choose my family now after all I'd lost? Sunlight streamed through the blue curtains of my Pittsburgh condo, their soft fabrics swaying in the late September breeze. The kitchen smelled of warm oatmeal cookies fresh from the oven, cooling on a tray beside a vase of daisies I'd bought myself. This was my home now, a cozy corner in a suburban complex, its walls bright with fresh paint, a new start paid for with the scraps left from selling the house I'd poured my life into for Ben. The surgery last week had steadied my heart. The $68,000 bill settled, but the ache of Ben's betrayal lingered. His forged loans, his push against my door, his cruel, "You're nobody now at the barbecue." I'd burned our family album in the courtyard, letting those memories turn to ash. But Luke's drawing and Bella's bracelet tucked in my bag were embers of hope. I stood by the counter, my fingers brushing the cookie tray, and felt liberated, no longer tethered to a son who'd erased me. The phone buzzed, Evie's name glowing on the screen. My sister's voice was warm, like a hug through the line. "I'm coming next week, Pat," she said. "Got an apple pie recipe ready for us, just like Mom's." She sent a photo, her hands kneading dough flour, dusting her apron, a surprise that made my throat tighten. Evie's fight to reconnect with her daughter after years apart over a career choice she'd never explained to me mirrored my own struggle. I pictured her in her Ohio kitchen, the same stubborn spark in her gray eyes that I'd seen when we were kids, arguing over who got the last slice of pie at Thanksgiving. That fight over Mom's necklace years ago seemed so small now. "Can't wait," I said, my voice soft, the cookie aroma wrapping around me like a promise. The condo's quiet felt alive, hopeful. A knock came soft but steady. Raymond Martinez stood at the door, his pirate's cap tilted, his hands in his pockets. "The neighborhood admires your strength, Pat," he said, his gray eyes kind. He'd lived across from my old house for 20 years, watching me pay every mortgage dime, while Ben parked his shiny SUV in the driveway. "You did what you had to," he added, accepting a cookie. I offered its warmth crumbling in his hand. I smiled, my chest lighter. Ray's words, simple and true, were a nod to the community I'd once leaned on, the one that saw me stand up at the block party and call out Ben's fraud. "Thanks, Ray," I said, the door creaking as he left, the cookie scent lingering. I turned back to the kitchen, my sandals soft on the linoleum, and grabbed my purse. Luke was waiting at the park, and I wasn't going to keep him waiting. The local park was a short walk, its swing set creaking under a sunny sky, children's laughter bouncing off the trees. Pittsburgh's suburbs stretched around me, houses with neat lawns, flags waving a slice of American life I'd fought to preserve for Ben, only to lose him to his own greed. Luke sat on a bench, his teenage frame, lanky, his hoodie loose. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and he stood wrapping me in a hug that smelled of grass and youth. "Bella says you're a hero, Grandma," he said, his voice cracking with that awkward teenage shift. He handed me Bella's bracelet, a woven band with a tiny heart charm, its colors bright in the sunlight. "She made it for you," he added, his smile shy. I pictured Bella, her giggles filling my old kitchen as we baked cookies, her small hands shaping dough. My throat tightened, tears pricking, but I blinked them back. "You're worth fighting for." I told Luke, my voice firm, resting a hand on his shoulder. "I fought for me, so you and Bella know you can too." We sat on the bench, the swing squeaking nearby, kids shouting as they chased a ball. I thought of the stories I'd told Luke waitressing in my 20s, saving for Ben's college, the nights I'd skipped sleep to keep us afloat. "You always made it sound like an adventure," Luke said, his eyes on the bracelet. I smiled, my heart swelling. His loyalty, his love for those stories was a thread that hadn't snapped even after Ben's betrayal. His forged loans, the smashed watch, his push. I shared my lesson, my voice steady. "Never let anyone make you feel small." I said, the park's laughter a soft backdrop. "You're enough, just as you are." Luke nodded, his fingers fidgeting with his hoodie string, and I saw the boy who'd listened to my tales with wide eyes. The breeze cooled my face as we stood my steps, light heading back to the condo, the park's joy lingering. Back in my kitchen, the cookie tray still smelled sweet, the daisies catching the late afternoon light. I pulled Luke's drawing from my bag, a sketch of me smiling, signed, "Love you, Grandma," and Bella's bracelet, its heart charm glinting. I hung them on the wall, their colors bright against the fresh paint, a quiet declaration of the family I'd chosen. Evie's photo, her hands in dough, sat on my phone, a promise of her visit of apple pie and laughter. I stood by the window, the curtain swaying, and said aloud, "I'm Patricia Coleman, and I chose to live." The words echoed, final, my liberation complete. Was I their mother or my own savior? The question settled softly answered by the life I'd built by Luke's hug, Bella's gift, Evie's call. But as I turned to the counter, my phone buzzed again, a new message waiting. I paused my hand, hovering the condo's quiet, holding its breath. The phone's buzz cut through the quiet of my condo, sharp and insistent. I stood frozen, my hand hovering over the counter, the scent of cooling oatmeal cookies still lingering. The message on the screen could be anything: Luke's hope, Evie's warmth, or something else, something heavier. After all I'd fought for selling Ben's house, surviving surgery, reclaiming my worth, could there be another storm waiting? I picked up the phone, my fingers steady despite the flutter in my chest. The screen glowed with a text from Sofia Alvarez, my lawyer. Pat, we need to meet. Issue with the house sale. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My breath caught the condo's fresh paint, suddenly too bright, like a promise fraying at the edges. The house sale had paid for my heart surgery, given me this new home, this new life. Ben's betrayal, the forged loans, his push, his cruel words had been buried with the ashes of that burned photo album. But Sophia's message hinted at trouble, a shadow creeping back. I set the phone down, the cookie tray's warmth fading, and looked at Luke's drawing and Bella's bracelet on the wall, their colors soft in the evening light. They were my family, now chosen and true. But could Ben's shadow still reach them? The next morning, I woke to the hum of suburban life outside my Pittsburgh condo, a neighbor's lawnmower, a dog, barking the rhythm of a world I'd fought to stay in. I pulled on a sweater, the air crisp with late September, and brewed coffee, its bitter scent grounding me. Evie's photo from yesterday, her hands kneading apple pie dough, sat on my phone, a reminder of her visit next week. I sipped my coffee, the mug warm, and thought of her story, reconciling with her daughter after years apart. It gave me strength, but Sophia's text gnawed at me. What issue could threaten the sale now? I grabbed my purse, Luke's drawing catching my eye, and headed to Sophia's office. The bus's hum steadying my nerves. Sophia's office was as orderly as ever, files stacked neatly, a U.S. flag pin on her desk. She greeted me with a calm smile, but her eyes were serious. Pat, the buyer's lawyer, found a lien on the house, she said, sliding a document across the desk. It's tied to another loan in your name, $75,000 filed after the sale closed. My heart sank, the room tilting. Another loan, I thought of Ben's voice at the barbecue. She'll never find those loans and his push against my door. Ben, I whispered, my voice tight. Sophia nodded, her pen tapping. Likely another forgery. We can fight it, but it'll delay your funds. I clutched the chair, my fingers digging into the wood. I'd given up my nursing dreams for Ben's house, and now he was still clawing at my future. What do I do? I asked, my voice steady but raw. Sophia leaned forward. We file a fraud claim, but it means facing Ben again. The bus ride home was a blur, the city's hum distant, my resolve hardening. Could I keep fighting without losing Luke and Bella back in the condo? I sat at the kitchen table, the cookie tray now cold. My phone buzzed again, this time Luke's name lighting up. "Grandma, can we talk?" he texted, followed by a photo of him and Bella at the park, her small hand waving. My throat tightened, picturing Bella's giggles during our baking sessions, Luke's wide eyes at my stories of waitressing in the 80s. I called him, his voice bright but hesitant. "Dad's mad about the house," he said, his words soft. "He says you're taking everything." My chest ached, not from the surgery scar, but from Ben's lies reaching Luke. "I fought to live, Luke," I said, my voice firm. "For me, for you, for Bella." He paused, then whispered, "I know, Grandma. Bella made you another bracelet." The call ended, and I stared at the photo, their smiles a lifeline. I wasn't just their mother, I was their anchor. But was I strong enough to face Ben again? Evie arrived that afternoon, her gray hair tucked under a scarf, carrying a bag of apples. For our pie, she said, her smile warm. We sat on the porch, the breeze cool, and she listened as I told her about Sophia's news. "Ben's still trying to pull you down," she said, her voice fierce. "I lost my daughter for years over my own stubbornness. You can't let him win." Her words echoed her own fight, and I nodded, the apple's sweet scent grounding me. We peeled them, the knife's soft scrape a rhythm, and I thought of Mom's Thanksgiving pies, how Evie and I would sneak bites of dough. "You're my family now," I said, my voice soft. Evie squeezed my hand, her warmth a promise. I stood my legs steady and walked to the wall where Luke's drawing and Bella's bracelet hung. A new bracelet woven with blue thread lay in an envelope Luke had sent. I hung it beside the first, its heart charm catching the light. "I'm Patricia Coleman," I said, my voice clear, "and I'll keep fighting." The condo's quiet felt alive, filled with the hope of Evie's visit, Luke's call, Bella's gift. But Sophia's words lingered a lean, another loan. Ben's shadow. I sat back down, the apple's scent fading, and opened my laptop, searching for more about the loan. A new email from Sophia popped up, her subject line, "Stark, urgent Ben's lawyer contesting the sale." My heart raced, the porch breeze suddenly cold. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling, and looked out at the suburban street where kids rode bikes, their laughter faint. The fight wasn't over, but I wasn't alone. Luke, Bella, Evie stood with me. What new move was Ben planning, and could I face him without breaking? The letter from my late husband trembled in my hands, its warning of Ben's debts, a final crack in the trust I'd given him. Yet Evie's voice echoed, urging me to fight. After years of pouring my heart into Ben's life, night shifts, missed dreams, a house I paid for, Mandy's confession of their forged loans stung like a betrayal I never saw coming. But in that pain, I found strength, learning that family isn't just blood. It's the ones who see your worth, like Luke with his quiet loyalty, or Evie with her steady love. In life, as long as we hold on to those who lift us up, we can rise above even the deepest hurts. My heart, frail but fierce, taught me to choose myself, to redefine what family means. If this story touched you, please share your own memories of love and struggle in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Let's keep these stories alive like recipes swapped over coffee in a Pittsburgh kitchen.